Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. Today on the program, the president insists the West Philippine Sea is ours.
There is no ifs and buts. It is ours.
But he cannot stop China from fishing in the disputed waters.
Yan ang problema. Sila yung in possession and claiming all the resources there as an owner.
The chief executive defends his fishing deal with Beijing.
We have to temper it with the times and the realities that we face today.
And standing firm that the country cannot go to war against China.
We are being intimidated. We have allowed ourselves to be intimidated. China will be totally devastated if it's a war with the U.S. But war has never been an option to them.
Supreme Court Senior Associate Justice Antonio Carpio joins us live. Thank you for joining us. I'm Pinky Webb. President Rodrigo Duterte justifies his fishing deal with China in his fourth State of the Nation address, or SONA. The president also repeatedly warns Filipinos that we cannot afford to go to war with the East Asian giant. He explains that his administration is in a, quote, balancing act to avoid any confrontation or conflict that could lead to an armed conflict. Mr. Duterte adds that China is in possession of some parts of the South China Sea, but his cabinet officials quickly clarify that China was in position in the disputed waters because of its military presence in the area. However, a Supreme Court Associate Justice refutes these claims and says that China is not in control or in possession of the West Philippine Sea. Let's go straight to the source of the story. Supreme Court Senior Associate Justice Antonio Carpio, SAJ. Always good to see you, sir. Thank you for your time.
Thank you also, Pinky.
First, we start with you calling on the Senate to look into this fishing deal between President Rodrigo Duterte and Chinese President Xi Jinping, this verbal agreement, sir. You're saying that the Senate should either ratify this or repudiate it. How can they go about this, sir?
Well, the Constitution says that no treaty or international agreement shall be valid and effective without the concurrence of 2/3 of the Senate. So it does not say no written treaty or international agreement. It's no treaty or international agreement. Now, the overwhelming majority of treaties are in writing, but under customary international law, you can have a verbal treaty or international agreement, and this happens to be one of that. The president said before the entire nation, I have a verbal agreement to allow the Chinese to fish. That's why that Chinese fishing vessel that rammed Denver has a right to be there, because people were asking why was that Chinese fishing vessel in Reed Bank when it's our exclusive economic zone? And the president said, oh, I have a verbal agreement with President Xi Jinping. So, and it is being implemented. That's the big problem. That verbal international agreement is being implemented. So it's a diminution of the power of the Senate. The Senate is being bypassed. It doesn't mean that because it's verbal, the Senate should not act on it. The Senate can always summon the foreign secretary and ask him, what is this verbal agreement about? Does it violate the Constitution? Is this fair? Is it lopsided against the Philippines? They can investigate that.
What if the secretary, hypothetically, says this is between the two presidents and it doesn't have anything to do with me?
No.
Is that a possibility?
No, he's the alter ego of the president when it comes to international agreements, and he should know. Because that's the only way the Senate can find out. Otherwise, the president would have found a way to bypass the Senate in treaties and international agreements by making it verbal.
And this is a clear example of that?
This is a clear example of that because this is a substantive matter. Under the Constitution, the exclusive economic zone is reserved exclusively for Filipinos. So the question is, does this violate the Constitution? Under the ruling of the arbitral tribunal, that is our exclusive economic zone. So there are two laws being violated here. The Constitution and
the Philippine Constitution and the
arbitral award.
We're gonna hihimayin natin yan SAJ a little later on. The question here is, you have the Senate President saying, What are we going to work on? We don't even have a document submitted to us.
Very easy. Subpoena, call the foreign secretary. Are you aware of this? What are the terms? What area is covered by this agreement? If it's Reed Bank, that's about 60 times the area of Scarborough Shoal. If it's the entire West Philippine Sea, that's larger than the territory of all the islands of the Philippines combined. So it's huge. And China has the largest fishing fleet in the world, about 220,000 fishing vessels, and they can scoop the fish there
Easily.
easily.
So the move or the call would be up to the Senate to call the DFA secretary.
Yes, that's the right thing to do.
Do you think they're going to do this, SAG?
Well, I think it's their duty. Of course, they can abandon their duty, but we have to call them and tell them, hey, you have to find out.
So, okay, it's either they do it or they don't do it. If they don't do it, you're saying it's as if they're abandoning their duty.
Yes.
Is there anything illegal that any citizen can possibly file over the Senate for not doing its job? Meron ho ba under the Constitution for negligence, or
Well,
if you're saying that's their duty
Well, they can question the constitutionality of the verbal agreement.
before the Supreme Court?
Yes.
Okay. So call the DFA secretary. What else? What could still be part of this so-called treaty or verbal agreement between the two presidents? What else can the Senate do? Maliban po sa pagtawag sa DFA secretary.
Well, they have to start with that because they have to establish the facts.
Okay.
What is that agreement all about? What is the scope? How many fishing vessels are allowed to enter our exclusive economic zone? How many tons of fish can they take every year? How long is that agreement? Is that forever or only for a short period of time?
I think that one here is that you have the Senate President saying, how are we going to work on this? There's no document. But you also have Senator Risa Ontiveros, who is saying that she may call on her colleagues to really look into this.
Yes.
So really, it's the call of the Senate.
If there is
from here
no
on.
written document, that's why they have to summon. You have to call the DFA officials to find out.
I guess a question here, SAJ, is if the two presidents speak, and this was born out of the Recto Bank, the Reed Bank incident, does that necessarily constitute a treaty? I know that you said that you had described that a while ago, but when does it become a treaty, or treaty or international agreement? When does that constitute a treaty or an international
When
agreement?
one party has a right to demand compliance, like the Chinese have now a right to fish in our EEZ when it's supposed to be ours exclusively. That requires a treaty, assuming that it's allowed by the Constitution. If it's not allowed by the Constitution, then it cannot be entered into.
And to you, it's plain and simple, it's not allowed
It's not
under
allowed
our
under my position.
Constitution, which is, of course, what we've been talking about, that Article 12, I think, or Article 12, Section 2 of the Constitution. That states, the state shall protect the nation's marine wealth in its archipelagic waters, territorial sea, and exclusive economic zone, and reserve its use and enjoyment exclusively to Filipino citizens. We've been using this article, sir, over and over again, trying
Yes.
to understand that. But here, let's go to the President's State of the Nation address. You had disagreed with a portion also of the President's State of the Nation address. He said this: the West Philippine Sea is ours, no ifs and no buts. But he also said that China claims the property and is, it sounded like, sir, he said, in possession. So let's hear again what the President said regarding this.
China also claims the property and he is in possession. Yan ang problema. Sila yung in possession and claiming all the resources there as an owner.
Was it possession or position for
The
you,
way
sir?
I hear it, it's possession. But I'm happy that Secretary Lorenzana and Secretary Esperon have taken the position, have clarified that it is not possession, it's position. And because they understand the consequence.
Yeah.
If you say possession, then one, the armed forces of the Philippines is tasked under the Constitution to protect our national territory, to protect our exclusive economic zone. That means if China is in possession now, then our armed forces have been remiss. They have not performed their duty to the state. Because they're the protector of the state, they are supposed to preserve our territorial integrity, our national territory. And that is like saying telling the armed forces, you have not performed your duty. So I think for them, they cannot accept that. And I agree with them. And legal and factually, that is not correct because China is not in actual possession.
Yeah, you were saying that if we're talking about, when you heard the word possession by the president, you already clarified this a couple of days ago. You said there are only 7 or 8 features in the West Philippine Sea. They are either what you call geological features, air and naval bases over there, which constitutes about 7% of the entire, is it the entire
West Philippine
Sea only? So if we talk about the West Philippine Sea, here's a map. We're just really talking about this area, no, sir? Up to here?
Up to the green.
Up to the green. Okay, that's the 200
Nautical
miles. So from the islands of the Philippines to this green line, sir. So if we talk about 7 or 8 features, nasan ho ba yung 7 or 8 features?
The 7 features are
Nandito dapat, no? Yeah.
The Panatag is not there. I mean, the Panatag should be in Scarborough Shoal. Can you? Yeah, that's it. Those are the 7 features, and the latest feature that China seized during the Duterte administration. The latest is Sandy Cay, 2017.
So, sir, these 7 or 8 features, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, because we don't have Sandy Cay here right now, these 7 are within the 200 nautical miles exclusive economic zone? To be clear?
No, not all.
Not all. Okay.
Gaven Reef is outside. Fiery Cross Reef is outside. Subi Reef is outside.
How many are within the West Philippine Sea?
About 3.
So 3.
Yeah.
So it's not 7 or 8 features are within the West Philippine Sea, sir?
Well, within our exclusive economic zone. But remember, we will still be claiming the extended continental shelf, and that will include everything.
Dun sila papasok.
Yes.
Pero dun sa
The 200 nautical mile EEZ, only about 3.
Are there. So you're saying that even with the extended shelf, which is 7 or 8 features, sir, this only comprises 7% of the West Philippine Sea. Ganun ho kaliit
Yes.
yun. To which you already said a while ago, sir, that it was Secretary Delfin Lorenzana and Secretary Hermogenes Esperon who said the president did not say, well, basically they said the president meant or said in position. Let's listen to what the 2 secretaries said.
I think the president did not say that they are in possession,
Yes, they are in possession.
but they are in position. In such islands as the Mischief Reef, which is within our EEZ, they are also in position in the Fiery Cross, which is outside our EEZ, and in Subi Reef, Zamora. In the 3 islands, out of 7, they have airstrips that are 3 kilometers long. And indeed, the build-up has been tremendous. So they have the positional advantage right now. And they have the equipment to enforce their position.
They have the position right now, sir. What do you say to that?
Well,
Agree.
I agree with the statement of Secretary Esperon and Secretary Lorenzana that the Chinese are in position in those 7 features. I mean, that's factual. But if you say possession of the West Philippine Sea, that's totally inaccurate. That's totally wrong.
When you say, though, before we go on a break, sir, that they are in position, forgive me, but it's almost as if it's common sense, sir. I mean, they built artificial islands, they
Yes,
have bases there. So, they're there, they are in position, it's theirs, right, sir? I mean,
Well, it's just because they have occupied it doesn't mean that they own it,
Yes.
because we are still disputing it. So we are not saying that we concede those features to China. They are disputed. They are territorial disputes. They are not covered by the UNCLOS ruling,
Yeah.
because UNCLOS only governs maritime disputes outside the 12 nautical mile territorial sea.
Secretary Salpanello, though, had added to this possession versus position. He said that they are how did they call?
Legal possession.
They are in legal possession or possession.
Possession. Well,
Possession. Pwede ba yun, legal possession, because they already have their artificial islands there?
yeah, I think this is a very serious matter because the tribunal ruled that the 9-dash line of China, under which they claim our EEZ, the tribunal said China's claim to historic rights under the 9-dash line are without lawful effect. Without lawful effect. That means they have no legal possession. They cannot acquire legal possession even if they occupy it, because the basis of their claim is the 9-dash line, and the tribunal said no, that has no legal
It's
effect.
invalidated, yeah.
It's invalidated. So China, even if it's physically in possession, assuming they are, but they are not actually, assuming they are, it's not legal possession, it's illegal possession. Now, the moment you say that China is in legal possession, you abandon the ruling. You contradict the ruling, and you give China an ammunition to demolish our ruling. So, it's very serious because China will always cite this statement of the Chief Presidential Legal Counsel that the Philippines has admitted that we are in legal possession. And therefore, that ruling will not apply anymore because this is a subsequent statement of the Philippines. Now, and Secretary Panelo added that this is the thinking of the president, that China's legal possession. So it's the duty of the president to disown this statement. It's the duty of the Foreign Affairs Secretary to disown this statement. Otherwise, we will be bound by this statement. And China will keep on citing this in the future. Every time we assert the ruling, they will say, oh, you already admitted we are in legal possession.
Should Secretary Sal Panelo also, are you calling on him to clarify or take back this statement
He
as
should
well?
take it back. If he doesn't want to take it back, he can always say that I was just joking.
We'll be taking a short break. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Please stay tuned. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today, Senior Associate Justice Antonio Carpio. After that position versus position statement, sir, I'm going to talk about this traditional fishing rights that the President also discussed during his State of the Nation address. Basically, to simplify it, and in my understanding as a non-lawyer, he basically said that way back, people were allowed to fish even before countries or laws were formed. Let's listen to exactly what the President said about traditional fishing rights.
I was invoking yung traditional fishing rights. It is in that arbitrary ruling. Ayaw lang ninyo gustong tignan. China and everybody recognizes traditional fishing rights for the natives who were there even before the creation of republics and governments. That law is a human law.
The traditional fishing rights in the arbitral ruling, sir? Is it in the arbitral ruling?
The arbitral ruling discusses traditional fishing rights, but the ruling says traditional fishing rights exist in the territorial sea and in the archipelagic waters.
Which are where?
Well, the territorial sea is Scarborough Shoal because that's territory. That's why traditional fishing rights were recognized by the tribunal. Archipelagic waters within the baselines of the Philippines, China is not claiming anything there. Now, in the EEZ, the ruling expressly says, in the exclusive economic zone, traditional fishing rights, if ever they existed in the past, are extinguished. That's the word of the tribunal.
Extinguished.
Extinguished. Why? Let me explain how this EEZ came about. Before UNCLOS, states have only 3 nautical mile territorial sea. And the 3 nautical mile territorial sea is where the state has exclusive fishing rights. Beyond that, that's already high seas. The world, anyone can fish outside. But because of the growing population in the coastal states, the 3 nautical mile was not sufficient anymore to feed the population. So coastal states demanded a bigger area, and this was the battle in the UNCLOS. The fishing countries with large fishing fleets wanted to narrow that, while the developing countries, including
to expand
China and the Philippines, expanded. And China was one of the main proponent of the 200 nautical mile EEZ. We followed China. So that was the agreement of everybody. 200 nautical mile exclusive. Nobody else can fish, whether you have historic rights before or not. And that's the agreement. That's why the tribunal said in the exclusive economic zone, historic rights to traditional fishing are extinguished.
Okay.
But in the territorial sea, they did not touch it. And because we created also under UNCLOS archipelagic waters, which is similar to territorial sea, they included that as part of traditional fishing.
So does it mean that it basically says, sir, in the arbitral ruling, from my understanding, is that any rights in the past are extinguished. We are now following this 200 exclusive economic zone.
Because the purpose of UNCLOS is to achieve peace and stability in the oceans and seas of our planet. That's why they delineated your territorial sea, 12 nautical miles, 200 nautical miles, and if you allow historic rights everywhere, there will be no peace and stability.
Right, that would be chaos.
Chaos.
Which I guess is our Article 12, Section 2 was born out of.
That's it.
Okay.
When our framers of the Constitution wrote the Constitution, they had this in mind. That's why they again reiterated that the exclusive economic zone, the resources belong exclusively to Filipinos.
So it doesn't contradict each other, sir.
No.
Our Article 12, Section 2, that it's for the enjoyment of Filipinos, and the UNCLOS ruling, the 200 nautical miles exclusive economic zone, are one and the same. However, sir, there is an Article 62 in the UNCLOS that I wanted to ask you about that basically says it recognizes instances where another state can actually utilize the resources found within another state's EEZ.
Yeah, first of all, because a sovereign state can decide to share its resources in the EEZ with another state, that's okay. But we are unique because in our constitution that's prohibited. The resources in the EEZ is reserved exclusively for Filipino citizens. We cannot share our resources because there's a constitutional prohibition. Without that provision, then we can share. We are not in the same situation as other coastal states because our framers of the Constitution realized that we have a huge population. 105, maybe 110 million people now. They cannot even find galunggong in the market now. It's very expensive, more expensive than chicken. So, and they're complaining. They cannot, our fishermen are complaining. They cannot get as much fish catch as, let's say, 5-10 years ago. It's rapidly being depleted.
So that ruling of UNCLOS, the Philippines, the framers of the 1987 Constitution even went a step further to actually say this 200 nautical miles exclusive economic zone is ours exclusively.
Yes, they prohibited the government from sharing it.
Yeah. But it never said that you cannot share, right? So
Yeah, but when you say exclusive, that's you cannot share. It means you cannot share.
all right. We'll be taking another short break. We'll be right back. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today, Senior Associate Justice Antonio Carpio. Sir, Recto Bank incident. Can government do anything to compel China to come up with this investigation? This happened July 9, sir, a month and a half ago. 22 Filipino fishermen left at sea. Still nothing from China.
Well, we cannot compel China because it's a sovereign state. We should do our own investigation, reach our own conclusion if China will not cooperate with us.
And how, if we do have our own investigation, sir, we're also waiting for China, but do you feel it's taking too long, sir?
Well, let's give them enough time. But assuming that they do not give us the results of their own investigation, we should proceed and demand damages from China.
Yeah, but what's enough time, sir? Really, just a basic question for me is because this happened June 9, a month and a half after still, we
No,
haven't
I
heard.
think we can give them about 3 months from the time that we had an agreement that they will conduct their own investigation.
But there's nothing in the UNCLOS that, I know that that's almost like a Bible there that you don't leave anyone at sea, but is there anything the Philippines can assert within the UNCLOS to demand from China anything regarding this?
Yes, for the damage done to the
We can do
gender.
that. Yeah, we can do that. All right. Very quickly, sir, Pag-asa Island, they're fixing the runway, and there's talk also to kind of invite people and tourists to come to Pag-asa Island. What are your thoughts on this, sir? Is it a good thing?
I'm for that. Declare it a marine protected area, invite tourists there, ecotourism. I think that will be good.
And you were talking about Sandy Cay a while ago, so just for the information of us and the viewers, sir, that was, sorry, we don't have Sandy Cay, I believe, right now here, but yun yung medyo malapit ho sa Pag-asa.
That's less than 3 nautical miles from Pag-asa.
Yeah, and then you're saying that,
Yes, because it emerged out of our territorial sea. It was submerged before, now it's
Lumutang.
above water at high tide the whole year round. So it's an island.
Yeah.
It has generated its own territorial sea.
actually there we have it,
Yes,
Pag-asa,
okay.
3 nautical miles is Sandy Cay. Okay.
That Sandy Cay was seized by the Chinese during the Duterte administration in 2017. It's huge. I mean, it will generate a territorial sea 3 times the land area of Quezon City.
And it's theirs already?
Well, they are physically in possession now. We cannot go there anymore.
Physically in
Of course,
possession.
we are not conceding that legally, but physically they are in possession.
You will never say legally possessed.
No, we will
In
not.
legal possession.
Because then you admit it belongs to them.
The Senior Associate Justice is retiring in October, sir.
In
Are you
October.
looking forward to this?
Yes, because I've been in the Supreme Court for 18 years. I think I deserve a rest.
But what would be the first order of the day for you upon resignation? Retirement, rather,
Well, I
sorry.
will continue with my advocacy on the West Philippine Sea.
You'll be more vocal.
Yes,
More vocal than this.
yes.
And we will see you possibly with Albert Del Rosario and Conchita Carpio
Yes.
Morales more. Tatlo na sila. All right, sir, maraming salamat po for your time.
Thank you also.
Always, thank you to Senior Associate Justice Antonio Carpio. Thank you for joining us here on The Source. I'm Pinky Webb. You're watching CNN Philippines.